First contact gone wrong. The vast emptiness of space stretched before Supreme Commander Zalkurix's viewport as he stood with his four arms clasped behind his back. His reptilian features remained stoic, but excitement coursed through his veins. After centuries of unchallenged conquest, the Krell Empire had grown complacent. Their technological superiority had made warfare predictable, even boring. But today promised something new. First contact with a species called humans. Supreme Commander, we've located their primary defense vessel at the edge of their solar system, reported Sub-Commander Vexterra, her scaled head bowing slightly in deference. Zalkurix's mouth twisted into what passed for a smile among the Krell. Show me. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the single spacecraft. It was sleek but primitive by Krell standards, roughly one-fifth the size of his command vessel, with visible weapon ports that seemed almost laughably outdated. This is their defense. Zalkurix couldn't contain his disappointment. Our long-range scans indicated the species had achieved faster-than-light travel. I expected more. Intelligence suggests they call this vessel the HSS Thunderchild. Vexterra continued. It appears to be a patrol craft, likely dispatched to investigate our presence. The Supreme Commander snorted. A single patrol craft. They send one ship to meet an empire that has conquered 17 star systems. Their arrogance is matched only by their foolishness. Around the command bridge, other Krell officers chittered in agreement. Their species had evolved from apex predators on their homeworld Krellis Prime, and the thrill of easy prey still stirred something primal within them. "Shall I ready the boarding parties, Supreme Commander?" asked War Minister Drexkor. These humans could make acceptable servants once properly subjugated. Zalkurix waved a dismissive hand. No need for such formalities. Send 2 of our scout vessels to capture it. I want prisoners for study, but don't waste resources on this distraction. As the orders filtered through the command hierarchy, the massive Krell dreadnought, a 12-kilometer behemoth of dark metal and glowing energy conduits, remained stationary. From its hangars, 2 smaller craft emerged, each still 3 times the size of the human vessel. They moved with predatory grace toward the HSS Thunderchild. "They're hailing us, Supreme Commander," Vexterra reported with surprise. "How quaint. Let's hear what they have to say before we take them." The communication screen activated, revealing a human female with dark hair pulled back tightly and eyes that betrayed no fear. Her uniform was simple but dignified, with minimal insignia. "This is Captain Maya Chen of the human stellar ship Thunderchild. You have entered sovereign human space without authorization. State your intentions immediately." Zalkurix stepped forward, allowing his imposing frame to fill the visual feed. "I am Supreme Commander Zalkurix of the Krell Empire. Your planet and species are now under our protection and control. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance would be unwise." The human captain's expression didn't change. "I understand. Request permission to inform my crew of your demands." The Supreme Commander felt a flicker of disappointment at the immediate capitulation. "You have 1 of your minutes. Then we will commence boarding procedures." When the communication ended, Vexterra approached cautiously. "That was easier than anticipated, Supreme Commander." "Such is the way with primitive species," Zalkurix replied. "They recognize superior force when confronted by it." But as the scout vessels closed to within 5,000 kilometers of the Thunderchild, something unexpected happened. The human ship, previously dormant and seemingly defenseless, suddenly came alive with energy readings that hadn't been there moments before. "Supreme Commander." Vexterra's voice rose with alarm. "The human vessel is activating unknown systems. Our sensors can't identify." She never finished her sentence. A pulse of blue-white energy erupted from the Thunderchild, expanding outward in a perfect sphere. When it reached the Krell scout ships, it simply passed through them. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then both scout vessels went dark, drifting lifelessly in space. What just happened? Zhal demanded, his composure cracking for the first time. The bridge erupted into frantic activity as officers scrambled to understand what they had just witnessed. Eventually, the tactical officer looked up, his scales pale with disbelief. Supreme Commander, all systems on both scout ships have been completely neutralized. No communications, no propulsion, no life support. It's as if they were never activated in the first place. Before Zhal could respond, the communication screen flared to life again. Captain Chen's face reappeared, her expression unchanged. I apologize for the misunderstanding. Supreme Commander, allow me to reintroduce myself properly. This is Captain Maya Chen of the human stellar ship Thunderchild, representing the United Earth Defense Force. What you just witnessed was a localized quantum disruption field, something we developed after our last encounter with hostile extraterrestrials. Zhal inner eyelids blinked rapidly in confusion. Last encounter. Your species is pre-FTL. Our intelligence. Your intelligence is outdated. Chen interrupted calmly. We found it advantageous to appear less advanced than we are. It helps us evaluate the true intentions of those we meet. The Supreme Commander's composure returned quickly. This was merely a setback, nothing more. An impressive parlor trick, Captain. But surely you don't believe one ship can stand against the might of the Krell Empire. No, I don't, Chen agreed. Which is why I've already transmitted everything about this encounter back to Earth. Our home defense fleet has been mobilized. As if on cue, the sensors chimed with new alerts. Spatial distortions were forming throughout the system. Dozens of them, then hundreds. Impossible, Vex Terra whispered. Our long-range scans showed no such fleet in this system. The first human warship emerged from what appeared to be a fold in space itself, not a traditional FTL exit point. Then another, and another. Within moments, the Krell dreadnought was surrounded by a fleet of vessels that hadn't been there seconds before. Spatial displacement technology, War Minister Drexkor muttered. They've mastered instantaneous spatial translocation. The implications were staggering. The Krell's own FTL technology required substantial energy and preparation time. What the humans were demonstrating was generations beyond their capabilities. Captain Chen's voice remained calm. As you can see, Supreme Commander, we are not defenseless, merely cautious. The vessels now surrounding your dreadnought represent approximately 8% of our current military capacity. Zhal mind raced. Everything they had believed about this species was wrong. The single patrol craft had been bait, an intentional display of weakness to evaluate the Krell's response, and he had failed the test spectacularly. But the Supreme Commander hadn't conquered 17 systems by surrendering at the first sign of resistance. He straightened his massive frame and issued orders. All batteries, target the human vessels and fire at will. Launch all fighter squadrons. We will show these humans the price of deception. The Krell dreadnought shuddered as its massive weapon systems powered up, plasma cannons and graviton beams preparing to unleash destruction on the human fleet. The moment of truth had arrived. What happened next would be recorded in Krell military archives as the 7-minute war. The human vessels, rather than scattering as expected, moved with coordinated precision. They didn't return fire initially. Instead, they projected overlapping energy fields that seemed to absorb the Krell weapons' fire with minimal effect. Sir, our weapons are having no significant impact, reported the tactical officer, his voice edged with disbelief. Before Zhal could respond, Captain Chen's voice came through again. Supreme Commander, what you're experiencing is phase-shifted defensive shielding. Your energy weapons are being redirected into a pocket dimension. We can sustain this indefinitely. The Supreme Commander slammed his fist against his command console. All ships, switch to kinetic projectiles. Launch the mass drivers. The massive railguns along the dreadnought's spine charged and fired, hurling tungsten rods at appreciable fractions of light speed toward the nearest human vessels. This, at least, should penetrate whatever exotic shielding they possessed. The projectiles never reached their targets. Meters before impact, they simply vanished. Micro wormholes, Chen explained, as if lecturing a student. We're redirecting your kinetic weapons into your local star. I would advise against continuing this approach. For the first time in his long military career, Supreme Commander Jelkurix felt a cold sensation in his stomach that he eventually recognized as fear. Nothing in the Krell arsenal seemed effective against human defenses. Perhaps we should reconsider our position, Supreme Commander, War Minister Drexkor suggested quietly. Before Jelkurix could reply, the human vessels finally began their counterattack. It wasn't the overwhelming barrage the Krell expected. Instead, precise surgical strikes disabled the dreadnought's propulsion systems and weapons arrays without causing catastrophic damage. We have no interest in unnecessary casualties, Captain Chen explained. But we will not permit hostile actions in our territory. You now have a choice, Supreme Commander. You can acknowledge our sovereignty and leave this system peacefully once we restore your propulsion capabilities, or you can continue this conflict and face the consequences. The bridge fell silent as all eyes turned to Jelkurix. Pride warred with practicality in his mind. The Krell Empire had never retreated, never acknowledged defeat. But neither had they ever encountered a species with this level of technological superiority. This isn't over, human, he finally said, his voice low and dangerous. You've won this skirmish, but the Krell Empire spans galaxies. We will return with forces that will overwhelm even your impressive technology. Captain Chen's expression softened slightly, and for the first time, she almost smiled. Actually, Supreme Commander, I don't believe you will. Because right now, while we've been talking, you've been scanned down to the quantum level. Jelkurix felt his blood run cold. What have you done? We've done nothing harmful, she assured him. But we now understand the Krell better than you understand yourselves. And that knowledge has already been transmitted throughout human space. The implications were clear. The humans weren't just militarily advanced. They possessed intelligence-gathering capabilities beyond anything the Krell had imagined. The next encounter would not go any better for the Empire. As the first part of this unprecedented confrontation came to its uneasy conclusion, one thing became abundantly clear to Supreme Commander Jelkurix. The galaxy had just become a much more dangerous place, and humanity was the reason why. The Reckoning. Supreme Commander Jelkurix paced the darkened command bridge of the Krell dreadnought, his claws clicking against the metallic floor. 6 hours had passed since the humans had disabled his vessel and departed, leaving the Krell with just enough power to maintain life support and basic functions. His greatest humiliation, however, was the knowledge that his entire encounter with the humans had been broadcast across all Krell communication frequencies. Every member of the High Command had witnessed his defeat. Repair status, he demanded, his voice dangerously quiet. Sub-Commander Vexterra approached cautiously. Main propulsion will be operational within the hour. Weapons systems remain offline. The humans did something to our targeting computers that our engineers don't fully understand. Jelkurix hissed in frustration. Centuries of Krell expansion had bred certainty into their culture, certainty of their technological superiority, certainty of their tactical dominance. That certainty now lay shattered around him like the fragments of his pride. And our scout vessels? Still adrift, Supreme Commander. Whatever the humans did to them, it wasn't merely an electromagnetic pulse. It's as if their systems were unwritten at the quantum level. The bridge fell silent. Technology that could manipulate matter at such a fundamental level was thought to be theoretically impossible, yet the humans wielded it with casual ease. War Minister Drexkor cleared his throat nervously. Supreme Commander, the Imperial Overseer is demanding to speak with you. Jelkurix stiffened. The Imperial Overseer represented the direct authority of the Krell Emperor himself. This conversation would determine not just his career, but potentially his life. Put her through, he ordered, squaring his shoulders. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the imposing figure of Imperial Overseer Nax Vidor, her scales gleaming with the ceremonial gold dust of her office. Her expression was unreadable, but the tension in her posture spoke volumes. "Supreme Commander," she began, her voice cold, "explain to me how a single human vessel managed to disable 2 of our scout ships, and how their fleet emerged from nowhere to surround our most advanced dreadnought." Imperial Overseer, the humans possess technology far beyond our intelligence estimates. Jalkurix replied carefully. They have mastered quantum disruption fields, instantaneous spatial translocation, and phase-shifted shielding. Our weapons were ineffective against. Excuses. Nax Vidor cut him off. The Emperor does not accept excuses, Commander. The Krell Empire has never retreated from battle, never acknowledged defeat. Yet here you stand, your ship disabled, your mission in ruins. This human Captain Chen has made fools of us all. Jalkurix fought to control this temper. With respect, Imperial Overseer, we face a species with technological capabilities that exceed our own by perhaps centuries. A tactical withdrawal would be unacceptable. Nax Vidor slammed all 4 of her fists down simultaneously. The 19th Fleet has been dispatched to your position. You will coordinate with Fleet Admiral Jex Rigar and crush this human resistance. The Emperor demands it. The communication ended abruptly, leaving Jalkurix staring at empty space. The 19th Fleet, 25 capital ships, hundreds of support vessels, and thousands of fighters. It was enough firepower to subjugate an entire sector. They're making a catastrophic mistake, Vexterra said softly, forgetting protocol in her distress. Jalkurix turned to her sharply. Explain. Supreme Commander, everything we've seen suggests the humans were holding back. If they can disable our vessels without destroying them, imagine what they could do if they truly meant us harm. Before Jalkurix could respond, the tactical officer interrupted. Supreme Commander, spatial distortions detected. Multiple signatures. It's the human vessel returning. The Thunderchild. On the main viewer, the sleek human warship appeared, alone once more. It maintained a respectful distance, but made no hostile moves. They're hailing us, reported the communications officer. Jalkurix hesitated only briefly. Put them through. Captain Chen appeared on screen, her expression as composed as ever. Supreme Commander, our sensors indicate you've nearly completed repairs to your propulsion systems. I've returned to ensure your safe departure from our territory. The condescension stung worse than any physical wound. Captain, I feel I should inform you that additional Krell forces are en route to this position. I would strongly advise you to withdraw while you still can. For the first time, a hint of genuine emotion crossed Chen's face. Not fear, but something closer to disappointment. I'm aware of your reinforcements, Commander. In fact, I know precisely when they will arrive, how many vessels are in the formation, and what orders they've been given. Jalkurix felt his scales tighten against his skin. Impossible. Those communications were encrypted using quantum entanglement. There's no way you could have intercepted them. Captain Chen smiled slightly. We didn't intercept them, Commander. We read them directly from your quantum receivers as the information was being processed. Your encryption remains unbroken. We simply observed the data after decryption. The implications were staggering. Such technology would render all Krell security measures obsolete. If the humans could passively read their most secure communications, why are you telling me this? Jalkurix asked, genuine confusion replacing his anger. Because I'm trying to prevent unnecessary bloodshed, Chen replied. Your 19th Fleet is impressive, Commander. 25 capital ships, 783 support vessels, and over 12,000 fighter craft. Under normal circumstances, such a force would be overwhelming. She paused, letting the exact fleet composition, information that should have been impossible for her to know, sink in. But these are not normal circumstances. I'm offering you a chance to contact Admiral Jex Regar and convince him to stand down before he makes a terrible mistake." War Minister Drexkor stepped forward. "This is a bluff. If the humans possessed the power to defeat our entire 19th Fleet, they would have destroyed us already." "No," Chen corrected gently. "If we were like the Krell, perhaps we would have. But humans value life, even the lives of potential adversaries. We prefer diplomacy to warfare when possible." Zhalkurix studied her carefully. "And if diplomacy fails?" Captain Chen's expression hardened. "Then we will defend ourselves with all necessary force." As if to punctuate her statement, spatial distortions began forming throughout the system again, but different from before. These were larger, more stable. "Supreme Commander, massive energy readings from all quadrants," the sensor officer reported, his voice cracking with stress. These are not like the previous human vessels." The view screen shifted to tactical display, showing what was emerging from the spatial folds. These weren't the sleek, surgical strike craft from the earlier encounter. These were behemoths, massive constructs of dark metal and pulsing energy that dwarfed even the Krell dreadnought. "Adaptive defense platforms," Captain Chen explained. "We deploy them only when we detect a significant incoming threat. Each one carries enough firepower to neutralize your entire 19th Fleet." The bridge fell silent as the tactical display showed dozens of these platforms taking position throughout the system. "There's something else you should know, Commander," Chen continued. "We've been watching the Krell Empire for some time. We're aware of the 17 systems you've conquered, the species you've subjugated. We've mapped your territory, analyzed your military capabilities, and identified the weaknesses in your core world's defenses." Zhalkurix felt as though the deck were falling away beneath him. "That's not possible. Some of those worlds are thousands of light years from here. Distance is less of a barrier than you might think," Chen replied cryptically. "The point is, Commander, that this encounter doesn't have to end in destruction. The Krell Empire can choose a different path." Before Zhalkurix could respond, his tactical officer interrupted again. "Supreme Commander, the 19th Fleet has arrived at the outer system boundary." The massive Krell armada dropped out of FTL in perfect formation, a testament to Krell military precision. At its center was the Imperial dreadnought Unyielding Dominance, a vessel twice the size of Zhalkurix's own ship and the pride of the Krell fleet. Almost immediately, the newly arrived fleet began broadcasting on all frequencies. "This is Fleet Admiral Jex Regar of the Krell Imperial 19th Fleet. All human vessels are ordered to surrender immediately or face total annihilation. You have one standard time unit to comply." Captain Chen sighed audibly. "It seems Admiral Jex Regar is making the same mistake you did, Commander. Perhaps you'd like to advise him of the reality of the situation." Zhalkurix hesitated. His duty to the Empire warred with his tactical assessment of the situation. The humans had demonstrated technological superiority at every turn, if the adaptive defense platforms were even half as powerful as Chen claimed. "Admiral Jex Regar," he finally transmitted, "this is Supreme Commander Zhalkurix. I strongly advise against hostile action. The humans possess technological capabilities far beyond our own. They have shown restraint thus far, but—" "Silence, Commander," Jex Regar interrupted. "Your failure has been noted. The Imperial Overseer has relieved you of command. Stand down and prepare to be boarded." The communication cut off abruptly. On the tactical display, the 19th Fleet was advancing in attack formation. Captain Chen watched the developments with an expression of genuine regret. "I'm sorry, Commander. We tried." The human defense platforms began to glow with accumulated energy. Unlike the previous encounter, there would be no surgical precision this time. The platforms were preparing for full-scale combat. "What will happen to my crew?" Zhalkurix asked quietly. "If you power down your remaining systems and declare neutrality in the coming engagement, we will ensure your safety," Chen promised. "We have no desire to harm those who don't threaten us." War Minister Drexkor stepped forward. "Supreme Commander, This would be treason against the Empire. No, Zhalkurix replied, his voice firm. This would be preserving Krell lives in the face of certain defeat. He turned to his bridge crew. Power down all systems except life support. Transmit our neutral status on all frequencies. The decision made, Zhalkurix could only watch as the 19th Fleet closed the distance to the human defenses. The Krell vessels moved with practiced precision, deploying into a three-dimensional assault pattern designed to overwhelm enemy positions through coordinated fire. Admiral Jexrigar's voice boomed across all channels. All batteries, target the human platforms and fire at will. Show these primitives the true might of the Krell Empire. What followed could only be described as slaughter. The human defensive platforms didn't bother with shields or evasive maneuvers. Instead, as the Krell weapons fire approached, space itself seemed to warp around them. The energy beams and kinetic projectiles curved away harmlessly, as if reality itself rejected their presence. Then the platforms responded. They didn't fire conventional weapons. Instead, spheres of distorted space propagated outward from each platform, expanding rapidly toward the Krell fleet. When these distortion fields touched the first line of Krell vessels, the ships simply folded, not exploded, not disintegrated, folded as if three-dimensional space itself was being compressed into two dimensions where the fields passed. The massive warships were reduced to flat, useless shapes that hung in the void like discarded paper. By the Emperor, Vex Terra whispered in horror, "What are we witnessing?" "Dimensional compression technology," Zhalkurix replied numbly. "They're manipulating the fabric of spacetime itself." In less than 5 minutes, over half the 19th Fleet had been neutralized without a single explosion or casualty. The ships and crews were intact, but rendered completely harmless, trapped in a state between dimensions. Admiral Jexrigar's flagship, the Unyielding Dominance, turned to retreat, but it was too late. A final distortion field caught the massive dreadnought, compressing it into a flat silhouette of its former glory. Captain Chen's face reappeared on the communication screen. "The engagement is over, Commander. As promised, your vessel will remain unharmed." Zhalkurix could barely form words. "What? What happens now?" "Now we talk," Chen replied simply. "About the future of relations between humanity and the Krell Empire. About the 17 species you've subjugated who might appreciate their freedom. About borders and boundaries and mutual respect." She paused, her expression softening slightly. "And about the greater threats that exist beyond both our territories. Threats that neither of us could face alone." "Greater threats?" Zhalkurix asked, his tactical mind already shifting from the immediate disaster to this new information. Chen nodded. "The reason we developed our defensive capabilities wasn't to conquer or dominate. It was because 57 years ago, we encountered something at the edge of our explored space, something ancient and immensely powerful that viewed all younger species as resources to be harvested." For the first time, genuine fear showed in her eyes. "We've been preparing ever since, knowing they would eventually return. The Krell Empire's expansion actually brought you closer to their territory without you realizing it." Zhalkurix processed this information in stunned silence. If what she said was true, if there was something out there that made humans develop these almost godlike defensive technologies out of necessity. "I believe you," he finally said. "And I believe the Krell Empire would be wise to listen to what else you have to say." Captain Chen smiled, a genuine, relieved expression. "Then there's hope for us all, Commander. Because what humanity has learned over centuries of our own conflicts is that the most powerful force in the universe isn't dimensional compression technology or quantum disruption fields." "What is it then?" he asked. "Cooperation," she replied simply. "Different species with different strengths working toward a common goal. It's how we united our own planet after centuries of war. And it might be how we all survive what's coming." As the disabled Krell ships drifted in space, transformed into harmless shadows of their former selves, Supreme Commander Zhalkurix realized that this defeat might actually be the salvation of his species. The Krell had always believed that conquest was the path to security and power. Perhaps they had been wrong all along. "I'm prepared to begin those discussions, Captain Chen," he said formally. "On behalf of the Krell Empire, I offer my cooperation." The human captain nodded, her eyes reflecting something that looked remarkably like hope. "Then let's begin, Commander. We have much to discuss, and if my calculations are correct, not much time before we'll need to stand together." As the communication shifted to secure diplomatic channels, Jalkurix gazed out at the flattened remnants of the once mighty 19th Fleet, a stark reminder of how quickly certainty could become humility. The Krell had believed they could crush a human warship. Reality had proven them catastrophically wrong. But perhaps in that wrongness, they might find something far more valuable than conquest: a future.